UFC 308 is the most stacked card of 2024, and there are a lot of big names fighting this Saturday. So today, we're going to be breaking down the biggest storylines so you guys know exactly what's at stake during the fights. Let's start off with Prospect Watch. We got Farid Basharat versus Victor Hugo. Basharat is an undefeated Afghani fighter at 12-0 in the bantamweight division, with his last win being against Taylor Lapalus, who is a really solid fighter. He's not ranked right now. He's about 29th in the world in the bantamweight division. With another couple of big wins, we could see him getting his first ranked opponent very soon.
This is definitely one of those early prelim fights that you're going to want to tune into. Neither of these guys have tremendous striking. This fight is going to primarily be on the ground, but it's not going to be no lay and pray wrestling. Like, both of these guys are going to go out there and they're going to be looking for the submission. So it's going to be very active on the ground. And this is almost a must-watch fight, especially with Basharat being such an up-and-coming prospect.
The next prospect on this card, the biggest prospect in the lightweight division, Miktabik Oralbai. You better get used to saying this guy's name because he's going to be around for a long time in this division. If you haven't heard his name, you've probably seen his face on Instagram or YouTube. He has a very Genghis Khan-esque face. No, he's not Genghis Khan, but he is a 13-1 Kyrgyzstani fighter who's on an 8-fight win streak, with 2 of those being inside the UFC. So he's a new signing, but he's well-rounded and he's still young at only 26 years old.
Even though he looks like he's 100 years old, and like he almost looks like he's like a stone figure. Like, he doesn't look real.
Yeah, he's been carved in stone for a long time. He's taking on Mateusz Rebecki, who's no slouch in competition either. Rebecki is 19-2 and 3-1 inside of the UFC. This is going to be a banger and the fight I'm looking forward to the most on the prelims of this 308 card.
I will give Dana White a lot of credit. Although I don't think he books a lot of cards tremendously, and I think he especially neglects the prelims of fights, this card has some stacked prelims. This is going to be another banger. Both these guys have unreal records, and they're really going to get to show out and put on a banger.
Yeah, Abu Dhabi cards are going to be some of the best cards moving forward because of how much money Saudis are putting into fighting.
This might be crazy to say, we might get canceled, but do you think it helps these Abu Dhabi cards because they can't have women on their cards?
Yeah, I know that's like a kind of a bad thing to say, but yes, fans do like the male fighters more just because they're typically more finishes, more exciting, more power. And there is tons of exciting female fighters as well. We're not saying that all of them are boring. It's just, for the most part, if you book a ranked number 15 versus a ranked number 13 female fighter, it's not the same caliber as a number 13 versus number 15 welterweight.
Exactly.
Moving on to the main card, we have Shara Magomedov, not ranked, versus Armen Petrosyan, also not ranked, in the middleweight division. Sharputin Magomedov, or Shara the Fraud Bullet as we like to call him, is 14-0 and undefeated fighter from Russia. He's been super active in the middleweight division. As soon as he got signed to the UFC, he's had 3 fights and 3 wins, and he's going to be looking to make his 4th win against Armen Petrosyan on Saturday.
It's interesting with Shara because he is very active, and that's very uncommon for these Dagestan fighters, but because he has to fight in Abu Dhabi strictly, he's basically forced to fight on every single Abu Dhabi card, which does help him up, even though we still love to hate on him. This is one positive about him.
Shara is a hyped prospect because of the way he looks, I think, primarily, and the volume of kicks and his creativity. However, he does have some large holes in his game, namely the grappling and takedown defense. We've seen in all of his previous fights, he really struggles with people who get him up against the fence. So I wouldn't be surprised if this fight is closer than expected. But Armen Petrosyan has the possibility to make this a close fight if he makes it dirty, mixes in some takedowns and wrestling. He was able to win against Christian Leroy Duncan, who at the time was undefeated. Petrosyan was submitted in his last fight, but trust me, he won't have to worry about this against Shara.
That's for sure. If Petrosyan can come out and take another 0 at 308, oh, it would make me such a happy man. I would almost say that if Shara loses, it would be okay if Max lost. Like, arguably, like, it would be okay if Shara loses.
Next up, we got Magomed Ankalaev, ranked number 2, versus Alexander Rakic, ranked number 5. In the light heavyweight division. This fight has the biggest favorite on the main card in Magomed Ankalaev, ranked number 2 in a lackluster light heavyweight division. Ankalaev is on a 12-fight unbeaten streak and is touted as the only man who has the possibility to beat Alex Pereira in that 205 division. Ankalaev is a Dagestani with great striking and, of course, great wrestling. He beat Johnny Walker in his last fight by round 2 KO, and before that he challenged for a title against Jan Blachowicz, which ended in a draw.
Unfortunately, Unfortunately, before he can think about the title, he has to go out and face Alexander Rakic, who was KO'd by Yuri Prohaska, a former champion and a two-time challenger at UFC 300 in the second round, but that's not to say that Rakic did not look really good inside of that first round.
Yeah, Rakic is being overlooked by a lot of people heading into UFC 308, which should tell you how highly people rate Ankalaev. Ankalaev is seen as a more complete fighter in the striking and even more so in the wrestling.
Ankalaev is very susceptible to calf kicks, as we saw in his fight with Jan Blachowicz. He could hardly walk by the end of round 2, and I'm sure we'll be seeing that implemented by Rakic if he wants to strike with Ankalaev.
This fight has huge title implications, with the winner most likely being the next challenger to Alex Pereira. Rakic is going to be looking for an upset win against Ankalaev, and Ankalaev is going to really be looking to prove himself that he deserves an exciting fight versus the champ.
Exactly. The UFC set this up as Ankalaev's last test before Poatan, but Rakic has the chance to do something hilarious and upset Ankalaev and go on to face Pereira.
Next up in the featherweight division, we have Lerone Murphy, ranked 12, versus Dan Ige, ranked number 14. Lerone Murphy is undefeated English fighter, 14-0, great striker, with his last win coming in May against the legend Edson Barboza.
Both of these fighters have faced Edson Barboza, and it is one of their best wins for both fighters. Murphy is one of the most hyped prospects and broke into the rankings with his win over Barboza earlier this year.
Dan Ige, on the other hand, is 18-8, fighting for the third time this year. His last fight at UFC 303 lost a decision to Diego Lopez on 2 hours' notice. So you know this guy is a savage. He'll take any fight, and he isn't afraid to trade shots. He's also never been finished.
Which is crazy for the people he's fought. He's fought in Diego Lopez, he's fought in Calvin Kattar, he's fought Josh Emmett, he's fought Bryce Mitchell. He has fought most of the top featherweights in the world.
But Lerone Murphy, he's going to be looking to extend his unbeaten streak, and you can expect this fight to take place mainly on the feet. Moving up the card, we have the co-main event, Robert Whittaker, ranked number 3, versus Khamzat Chimaev, ranked 12, in the middleweight division. The co-main event is absolutely stacked, and this is where I'm going to get really nervous for this fight.
Yeah, these last two fights are both very neck and neck. Although the odds don't say it for the next fight, these fights could go either way, and we're going to be on the edge of our seat for 50 minutes straight.
Robert Whittaker has been a staple of the top 10 for over 9 years in the middleweight division, and he's taking on probably the most aggressive and best wrestler we have ever seen, Khamzat Chimaev.
Chimaev is an undefeated 13-0 inside of the UFC. He moved up from welterweight to middleweight after struggling to hit the weight of 170, and his last fight was against a former champion, Kamaru Usman, on short notice at 185.
Chimaev seemed unstoppable in his first couple fights. However, the narrative has changed from unstoppable beast to will he show up?
A really funny story, Lucas, is that for the first time ever, Chimaev has made history. There is a sports betting book. They have a line set at will Chimaev fight at UFC 308. It's very similar to the odds of him winning. So if you don't want to bet if Chimaev will win, you can bet that he won't even fight at UFC 308, which is crazy that they would do that for a fighter. Robert Whittaker is the former champion of the division and has only lost to Izzy and Dricus since he moved up to the middleweight division.
Whittaker and Chimaev had a scheduled bout earlier this summer, but due to medical reasons, Khamzat, of course, pulled out, leaving Ikram Aliskerov, an unranked middleweight, to step in on short notice against the Reaper. Whittaker ended his night in the first round with a brutal uppercut.
Now we're back in the same position, wondering if Khamzat is really a beast who can break into the top 3 of the division, wondering if his gas tank will hold up in a 5-round co-main event. This is since Khamzat has never gone a full 5 rounds in his UFC career.
If Whittaker can survive an early onslaught, there's a good chance you can expect him to steal the later rounds. This fight is going to be interesting to say the least. Finally, the main event, the most hyped fight of this year in 2024, we have the champion, Ilia Topuria, taking on Max Holloway, ranked number 2 in the featherweight division.
The BMF!
Yeah, that's true, the BMF champion. Ilia Topuria is the new king of the featherweights with his win over Alexander Volkanovski at UFC 298 earlier this year.
He'll be looking to make his first title defense against the legendary featherweight Max Holloway.
Holloway's coming off his biggest career KO over Justin Gaethje, who's a power puncher in a weight class above him. Holloway KO'd Gaethje with 1 second left in their fight at UFC 300.
Absolute parlay ruiner. Topuria was able to go in there and knock out Volkanovski in 7 minutes, something Holloway has not been able to do in 75 minutes inside of the octagon.
If you did MMA math, this would mean that Topuria should have an easy night ahead of him, but MMA is all about stylistic matchups.
Topuria is a power puncher with strong boxing and grappling. However, Holloway is a volume puncher with specific kicks that elevate his game. Both are truly elite MMA fighters that have something to prove at UFC 308.
Max is here to prove that he's the best of this division even after losing 3 times to Volk.
Topuria is here to prove that nobody in featherweight stands a chance. If he's able to beat Volk and Holloway in the same year, it will be unbelievable.
This is the biggest matchup that the UFC could make. The story doesn't get any bigger than this on the biggest stage. If you guys want more in-depth breakdowns and casual guides to more cards, let us know in the comments, and we'll see you guys in the next one.
Peace.
See ya.